Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us here today in the ABWM booth at WoundCon Summer 2021. My name is Caoimhe Kenny, and I'm the Director of Marketing for the American Board of Wound Management. I am delighted to welcome you to our session, Earning Your ABWM Wound Certification, How to Apply and Mistakes to Avoid. I am joined today by my colleague Matt Pina, who is the Manager of Certification here at ABWM. In terms of the format for today's session, Matt will spend the first 10 minutes or so walking you through the ABWM application process, and then we can spend the rest of the session answering audience questions. So please feel free to pop any questions you have for Matt in the chat box or in the Q&A box down at the bottom of the panel, and we'll have time to answer them all towards the end of the session. And just to note that this session is being recorded and it will be available in the ABWM virtual booth for the next 7 days as part of the on-demand portion of the conference. So let's get started. Take it away, Matt.
All right, thanks, Caoimhe. So we're just going to jump into step one here, which is concerning eligibility. So obviously that would be the first step when assessing whether this certification is for you or if you're interested. So we have one universal eligibility requirement across all three of these certifications, which is the 3 years of wound care experience. And then from there, it sort of deviates more based on your specialty or education level. So as you can see here, we have the CWCA, the CWS, and the CWSP. So it's kind of like a tiered structure, might be an easier way to think of it. So our associate level certification is LPNs, LVNs, PTAs, people that are in sales and marketing. These also aren't meant to be all-encompassing. So if you don't see your profession on here, not necessarily that you cannot apply. The main point just being that 3 years of wound care experience. And what we mean by that is just sort of a general 3 years cumulative wound care experience. We're not looking for specific types of wound care or number of hours, etc., anything like that. So don't overthink that too much. It's somewhat of a self-assessment when it comes to that. There's a content outline on our website for each of these certification exams, so you can sort of do a bit of a comparison between your knowledge and these exams before you go ahead and apply. So that leads us into step two, which is going to be application. As of May this year, we've actually moved to an entirely online application system, which is great. So that can be found at this link on our website under the certification resources tab. There's a how to apply section that has a step-by-step guide, starting with the application, what you have to include in there, how that's reviewed, and then moving on to, if it's approved, then the scheduling of the exam. So it's a complete guide A to Z of how to go about applying and sitting for the exam. So we have the different links there, as we noted, for the different certifications. And then you would actually use the Certime is the name of the software platform that we use for the online application. It doubles as our database as well, so everything kind of just lives in there. So if you become certified, that's where you're going to manage your certification as well. Then we move on to scheduling of the exam. So once you've gone through that online application, you've entered all the items, which you can track them all individually and see where you are in the process, which is great. Once that's approved, you'll then be awaiting an email from our testing partner, Pearson VUE. So they send you a separate email just with instructions on how to go about scheduling the exam. So you would make an account on the Pearson VUE website following the instructions in their email, and then you can schedule online, which is usually the easiest, but they do have a phone and live chat option on their website as well. As you can see, we've got over 300 locations right now through Pearson VUE across the US, across their testing centers. And then we do offer international testing as well, so you don't have to be US based either in order to sit for the exam. And then just some other points to touch on here, post-certification as far as what's required of you when you are certified. So we require an annual renewal fee of $150, which is due by the 31st of January every year. So everyone renews on a calendar year basis. It's not based on your when you certify. And along with that fee would be 6 hours of continuing education in wound care. And similar to the 3 years experience that I mentioned, it's not meant to be very specific. So it's just, if it's wound care related, then it's fine. So we don't have a list of what is or isn't considered wound care in that sense. And then recertification via exam would be done every 10 years. So annual renewal, but 10-year recertification via exam is the other piece of the maintenance there. So that's sort of just a general overview from start to finish, how you go about applying, scheduling, taking the exam, and what is required as far as maintenance goes as well. And I think we had one question. Is it?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, there's a question there in the chat. So the question is, if there are professionals that are a licensed PT or an RN who want to advance their wound care practice, but do not want to take the vigorous training and studying that a CWS entails, can they apply for the CWCA instead?
Yes, so just going back to that eligibility, we can go back on the PowerPoint here to that. So as I mentioned, the professions that we list here, it's not meant to say that you can only take that one or another one. So for example, an RN or a PT, they would be eligible for both the CWS and the CWCA. So then it's just a personal choice. So between the CWS and the CWCA, the requirements would be 3 years of experience and then education level. So you can see people here on the CWS, you generally have a bachelor's degree at least, which I know is not always the case for an RN, but that's the one exception that we do have. So yeah, you could do whichever one you'd like. Just like you see with the CWSP, which is our physician exam, we do have physicians that just elect to take the CWS because they just would prefer to take that one instead. Less questions, maybe just a slightly smaller scope of content for them to work with as well. So definitely some wiggle room there.
Awesome. We have another question here. Who offers classes to get certified?
So there's a great section on our website, abwmcertified.org is our website, and there's a section titled How to Prepare. So under that section, we have a whole host of resources, most of them administered through our educational foundation. So any links that you click on there is likely going to take you to the ABWM Foundation site, but they're our educational arm, and the only thing they do is study prep. So they have things like practice exams, flashcards, study guides, and then they do have links to some third-party organizations that offer courses in person or virtual. So we don't offer those, but we do have sort of a list of where one could investigate taking a course of some kind, if that's how you study. Obviously, everybody studies different. So some people enjoy the flashcards, some people want to sit in person and take a course. It's just sort of up to how you study best.
Great. And also just to point out that list of resources that can be helpful, that previous people have found helpful to study for the exam, is available in the form of a PDF download in our WoundCon booth as well, under the certification resources button. So feel free to add that to your tote bag as well.
I would just add that it's also, if anybody's familiar with some other certifications out there, this isn't a certification where you take a course and then you're eligible and you take the test. So any courses or any type of other study material is purely a method of preparation. And they are self-study exams, so it is ultimately up to you how you prepare. But whether or not you take a course doesn't affect whether you can or cannot take the exam. So that's just for your benefit if you took that and wanted to do that, to prepare that with that. That's why you would do it.
Great. It might be helpful as well, Matt, to just go over our retesting procedures. So if you're not successful in your first attempt with the exam, what can you do then? Yes.
So if you go sit for that exam the first time and you don't pass, then we do have a retesting policy, which this sort of overarching policy to note would be that you have 2 years to retest as many times as necessary or as you feel like from that date of your first attempt. So if you took the exam today, you would have 2 years from today to retest as many times as necessary. And then just breaking that down a little further, then you can retest up to 3 times with simply submitting a retest form and the associated fee for retesting. But once you get to that 4th attempt or more, each attempt above 3, so attempt 4, 5, 6, etc., you would have to submit 20 hours of continuing education in wound care for each of those attempts. And then there's a 30-day waiting period between attempts. So again, if you took it today and you didn't pass and you want to retest, the earliest you could still submit the form, whenever, but the earliest you could reschedule for that second attempt would be 30 days from today.
Thanks, Matt. One question we get a lot as well, I know that there's a high level of international participation in WoundCon. So can individuals who are outside of the United States sit for our exam?
Yes, so your location is not something that counts against you at all. So it's open to anyone. And it's definitely easier now having the online application. Prior to that, it would be something that you would hand fill in or type and then print out and mail to us. So that's makes it much easier for people who are not domestic. But yeah, it's the same procedure. There's nothing different. There's just an additional international testing fee that one pays that differs based on whether it's in North America or further afield, and then also based on the type of exam, which one you're taking. But that's the only difference. And that fee is just because our testing partner, there's some additional expenses, seeing as a lot of the testing overseas takes place with sort of third-party sites that Pearson VUE works with if they don't have a Pearson VUE center in that location. So that would be the only difference as far as the application.
Great. And if a candidate wanted to request any kind of special accommodations, is there an easy way for them to do that?
Yes, so all the testing or Pearson VUE centers, they're all ADA compliant in the US. So we do have on our Pearson VUE landing page, there's an ABWM landing page on the Pearson VUE website that you can get to from our website that has that information, as well as our own website. But there's just a fairly standard form to fill out as to what the special accommodation would be. So maybe, extra time or a less distracted environment, things like that are all pretty standard accommodations, and we do get those from time to time. So you would just fill out that associated paperwork and then send that along with the application. And yeah, there's generally anything on that form anyways is approved as long as the documentation is provided. So there shouldn't be any problem with that, getting that done.
Great. Let's see if we have any more questions here. Could you remind us what the cost on each of the exams is again, Matt?
Yeah. So the first time application fees for the 3 would be, so the CWCA, the associate level 1, that's $375. And then it's $575 for the CWS, and then it's $995 for the CWSP. And then also, just because it's also a common question, so there isn't a separation between application and test fee. That's the whole fee for the whole spiel from application through testing. It's not, that's the application fee and then you pay a testing fee. It's all one and the same.
Great. And I think it might be worth mentioning there as well that our partner organization, the ABWM Foundation that we mentioned earlier, offers a number of scholarships each year for people to take the test of their choice. So you can have a look at that section of their website as well. I'll pop a link in the chat, but that's something you could consider applying for as well. And then finally, When do candidates receive their exam scores, Matt?
So they're all computerized multiple choice exams. So it's an instant scoring system. So you would sit down at the test center, take the test, and with you, when you leave the test center that day, you'll have a score report in your hand telling you, one way or the other. Which also, just to mention, if you do pass the exam at that point, then we are updating our systems at least once, if not more, a week with that information. So you'll then receive most of your certification materials from us. Pearson VUE is just delivering the exam, and then we send you some materials outside of that, as far as a certificate and some merchandise and your login and all that for our website, where you would then manage your certification online going forward.
Great, thank you. So I think that's it for all the questions that we got. So unless anybody has anything else, I think we can wrap up here. Thank you all for coming to our session and for all of the great questions. And thanks to Matt for an excellent presentation as well. I think you'll all agree that it's been very informative.
Yeah.
So just to remind you, sorry, Matt. Just to remind you, this session has been recorded and it'll be available on demand in the ABWM booth over the course of the next week during the on-demand portion of the conference. So if you'd like to refer back to any of the information provided, you can do that there. And don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter. You'll find links for all of that in our booth, and that way you'll be able to stay up to date on everything ABWM. So thank you and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks.